Penza. Lately, this city has been the subject of much discussion and writing. The year was 1982. Penza. That morning, a worker at a diesel plant arrived for her shift. As she walked toward her workshop, she suddenly noticed a woman lying on the ground. Thinking she might be ill, she approached. "Hey!" she called out. Moving closer, she saw a horrific sight. The poor woman's head had been shattered. Soon, an investigative team was working at the crime scene. How did this happen? An industrial accident? That theory was dismissed immediately. There were numerous hematomas, a deliberate and brutal murder. The blows to the head had been delivered with a hard, blunt object. Hundreds of people worked at the plant. One of them was a killer. Question all possible witnesses. The order went out. The plant was heavily guarded, but detectives didn't rule out that an outsider had snuck in, choosing the attack site carefully. An unknown person could have secretly entered, waited for the woman, and then vanished. Yet, everyone seemed to have a perfect alibi. Why was she killed so savagely? Revenge, jealousy, or something else? No one could guess. This story would unfold into a series of dramatic events. The investigation into mysterious and cruel murder began. The crime had occurred at a major enterprise. Viktor Sokolov stood on the grounds of the Penza diesel plant. Back in 1982, the lead on this case was Senior Inspector Sergei Zatov. The victim was identified as 35-year-old crane operator Valentina Zakharova. Someone had struck her head repeatedly with a hammer. Why? The initial thought was attempted sexual assault, but strangely, no typical traces were found, only disheveled clothing. Detectives searched for witnesses, checking plant employees who worked the night shift. They gathered information about Valentina. She was a local beauty, but as inaccessible as a cliff. She had been married once, but tragedy struck when her only child was killed by a car due to her husband's drunken negligence. The family collapsed. She lived alone and did not trust men. Who would want to hurt her? Flashback. 15 years ago, he had been following this girl for months. He knew what she liked and what she wore. He knew her schedule. He could have written a book about her, but he couldn't bring himself to talk to her. Everything changed one evening. He was watching her from the bushes as usual, but she wasn't alone. A guy was walking her home, and they kissed. It was unbearable to watch. Back in 1982, the search for Valentina's killer continued. It was discovered that prisoners from a nearby colony were used for labor in the foundry. Could one of them have slipped away? Detectives requested data on similar crimes. At that moment, a new tragedy struck. A worker returning from a shift in a courtyard on Lobachevsky Street noticed blood leading to a doorway. He found a female body under a balcony. The girl was heavily wounded, but still alive. He called an ambulance, but she died minutes later. This new crime happened in the same district, 10 minutes from the plant. The victim was Oksana Kativa, a fourth-year student. Detectives concluded the killer attacked her on the street, dragged her into the hallway to continue the beating, and then fled. The wounds were identical to the first case. Hammer strikes. This suggests a serial killer was at large. Someone who didn't rob or rape, but simply crush heads. Flashback. He couldn't stand seeing her with someone else. He decided to kill the rival. He waited outside her house with a hammer. They appeared, talked, and went inside. He sat under her window until morning. When the enemy finally left, he was ready. But the girl came out, gave him a forgotten umbrella, and kissed him again. The search for the hammerman intensified. A witness finally emerged, claiming he saw a young man dragging the girl into a hallway, thinking they were just drunk. Then a connection was found. Oksana's father worked at the same diesel plant where Valentina was killed. Suspicion fell on Eugene Pizarev, an engineer known for crude jokes and peeping on women in showers. Viktor Sokolov noted that being an engineer was a vital profession. But in this case, an engineer became a suspect. Pizarev was a mother's boy, never married. Detectives watched him and caught him trying to look under women's skirts. When interrogated, he cried and begged them not to tell his mother. However, he had a solid alibi for the murders. He was home calling an ambulance for his sick mother at the time. The investigation took another turn involving a wedding scandal. Oksana Kativa had been engaged to Pyotr Orlov. Her 14-year-old sister, Zhenya, was secretly in love with Pyotr and took photos of them. One day, Zhenya saw Pyotr with another woman and snapped a photo. At the wedding, when asked if she would take Pyotr as her husband, Oksana said no, called him a traitor, handed him the photo, and walked out. Detectives thought Pyotr might have killed her out of revenge for the humiliation. But Pyotr had left for a job in the north and was thousands of miles away during the crimes. Then, a worker named Oleg Baranov vanished. His mother had a dream that he was lying in a nearby forest. She went there herself and found his body. He had been hit by a car and then finished off with an axe. A clue was found, a magazine cover with a coded address. It led to Ivan Dubov, a driver. It turned out Dubov and a friend had stolen a truck. While drunk, hit Baranov, panicked, and killed him with an axe to hide the accident. They were sentenced to 13 and 12 years, but they weren't the serial killers. The real killer struck again. A woman named Tatiana was at home when a man forced his way in, brandishing a hammer. He assaulted her, but she managed to lock herself in another room until he left. The police identified him as Vitaly Ubrin, 30, a twice-convicted rapist. In his room, they found a hammer with blood and children's clothes. He wasn't married, so this was strange. They set an ambush and caught his fiancée, Anna, who revealed that Ubrin was a violent sadist who was impotent and took out his frustration on women. Ubrin was finally caught. He laughed and said, "I'm already a corpse." His trauma went back to that girl 15 years ago. He had finally approached her and told her he loved her. She laughed and said, "Boy, you're sick. Go to your mama." That phrase turned him into a monster. He had snuck in the plant to deliver a package to inmates, saw Valentina, who reminded him of his old obsession, and attacked her. When he failed sexually, he used a hammer. He did the same to Oksana. Viktor Sokolov concluded that while others achieved great things by 30, Ubrin only left behind blood and death. He was executed. Karaganda, an elderly woman, found a man bleeding on her doorstep. It was Viktor Siskin, a respected head of a motorcade. He had been stabbed and his head smashed, but he survived because he had been drinking at a celebration, which dulled his pain response. Detectives initially suspected a group of aggressive teenagers, but one 13-year-old suspect was clearly innocent. Then, a gang began a series of thefts, including 11 national costumes from a dairy plant club. A beautiful blonde was behind the scenes, directing a group of men. When they brought her the costumes and a stopwatch, she was furious, calling them idiots and demanding they find someone wealthy to rob. A series of brutal attacks followed. Engineer Baseki was stabbed to death near his home. His body was robbed of everything, even his handkerchief. That same night, a police academy teacher was stabbed and robbed of his clothes. A witness saw 3 men, one very tall. The blonde decided to join the next job herself. A taxi driver named Nurgamatov disappeared. His car was found in a reservoir, and his body was found burned and mutilated. A witness who survived a ride in that hellish taxi described a beautiful blonde and 3 dark-haired men. The city was in a panic. Viktor Sokolov noted that while men are often drawn to blondes because they seem defenseless, this woman was anything but. A breakthrough came when a detective's wife left town, and he invited a girl over. During their intimacy, she bragged, "I'm that girl from the murders." He immediately arrested her, but she turned out to be a liar just looking for attention. The real gang struck again, ripping gold earrings from a woman's ears and stabbing a man. Karaganda was placed under a military-style blockade. The gang, led by Nina Strizakova, planned one last big score. They lured a passenger from Uzbekistan, carrying crates of cherries, into a fake taxi. The driver was killed and the passenger robbed. Finally, a driver named Yuri Korzev fought back. He stabbed one of the bandits in the face with a broken bottle before they killed him with a heavy valve. This led police to Nikolai Volchenko, who went to a hospital for his facial wound. Under interrogation, Volchenko broke and led police to the blonde's apartment. The gang was arrested in a tactical raid. Nikolai Volchenko, Nikolai Korolchuk, and Ravkat Mullen were sentenced to death. Nina Strizakova, the cuckoo mother who had abandoned her children to lead this bloodthirsty crew, received 15 years. Her children were raised by relatives under a different name. Novgorod. A pregnant woman was found strangled in a school greenhouse. The victim was Marina Grimova. Detectives found yarn fibers under her nails. Her husband was a suspect, but had an alibi. A different investigator, Deviatkin, claimed he could solve it in a month. He beat a confession out of two local thieves, Borisov and Sidorenko. They were about to be sentenced when another woman was attacked in the same way. The real killer was Boris Filimonov, a model worker and family man. He had a fetish for women's accessories, makeup bags, and jewelry. He had previously served time for stealing purses. To his wife, he was a provider who brought home gold. To the world, he was a monster who had assaulted 28 women. He was caught after attacking a policewoman acting as bait. In his locker, they found a blood-stained sweater and the victim's jewelry. He was executed, and the police officers who covered up his earlier crimes to keep their statistics clean were also imprisoned. Tyumen. Two schoolgirls found a blood-stained trail leading to a shed containing the body of Tamara Pantelieva, a beloved cinema cashier. The killer was exceptionally cruel. Suspicion first fell on a recently released convict, Veniamin Kurbatov, because of a hat left at the scene, but he was innocent. Investigator Nikolai Miserin noticed a pattern. All victims were attacked from behind on the left side. The killer was a lefty. In the 70s, left-handedness was discouraged in schools. This lefty had a habit of taking one small trophy from each victim: a scarf, a key, a mirror. The killer was identified as Gennady Karlov, a sailor on a boat. A schoolgirl he attacked recognized his joined eyebrows. In his dormitory, police found his bloody collection. Karlov tried to claim he was mentally ill, but he was found sane and executed. The trial was held in a public hall, where an accuser spoke in the name of the Communist Party and the grieving parents. Tambov region. Vitaly Shevtsov returned home to find his house on fire and his two sons, Andrei and Sergei, murdered with an axe. This was an act of evil memory. Detectives noticed that the villagers were silent, paralyzed by fear. It turned out Vitaly, who worked at the local telephone exchange, had accidentally overheard a conversation about a robbery of the local farm's payroll. He didn't report it. The men on the other end heard him breathing and knew they were being listened to. The killer was Yuri Lunin, a local thug who held the village in a grip of terror. He had a grudge against the older brother, Andrei, because of a fight at a wedding where Andrei stood up to him. Lunin, along with a gang that included a 14-year-old and his pregnant girlfriend Rita, attacked the house. They killed the boys to eliminate witnesses to their payroll heist and out of petty revenge. Lunin was sentenced to death, later commuted to 15 years, and eventually committed suicide after his release. The pregnant girl, Rita, cooperated with the investigation and disappeared to start a new life. As Viktor Sokolov would say, that is a completely different story.